Hello, boys and girls. It's Drew from Misfit Athletics with a special edition Misfit Athletics podcast. Back in October, I set out to write an article for you guys on a new concept that I really felt like I had a breakthrough with. And as some of you know, writing is probably my preferred medium when it comes to media, but the idea, in my opinion, was not coming across well. And I think that there's a lot of feeling and heart and emotion that's attached to this, and that might be why. So I'm going to sit in front of this camera and microphone and try to not ramble too much, but to explain to you guys what this concept is, where it came from, and maybe how to apply it to your life, your training, and so on. The topic of the day is intensity. And intensity can also be, if we're talking semantics, it could be into this mental toughness question that's asked a lot. So for the longest time, when, in our inner circle, we have these conversations about intensity and mental toughness and what is it? And does it even exist? How do you get it? Why should you do it? And this conversation is more about the how and what than the why. We've obviously had a ton of media on the why of intensity, and you guys can understand where that comes from. So for the longest time, my opinion on this subject was related almost exclusively to the concept of the more experiences that you have, the less likely you are going to get stressed out by a specific movement, energy system, experience, whatever it is. And that's where mental toughness comes from. It comes from not shying away from certain things, learning and adapting and growing. And it's not as if I changed my opinion on this. This is more of like an evolution and expansion of where this comes from. And it's still imperative to, it's almost like a precursor to the concept of focus equals intensity, that we call upon the mountain of data that we get every single day when we train, whether we decide to actually use it or not. I say we, I mean you guys. You guys train so hard, so often, and there is so much information built into every rep, every movement, every workout, every round, all of these different things. You can learn so much about what you're capable of during this. And to me, that starts to chip away at those insecurities that we associate with certain things. Once we have that information and we're making a reasonable judgment of how we should attack something, then what? Once we're in the piece, once we've made the decision that, it's a 2K row, I'm not going to start at a 114 per 500 meter pace, what do we do to maintain intensity? So the examples that I gave in the article had a lot to do with these high skill movements. These high skill movements like a chest to bar pull up or a muscle up, or something that takes a lot of skill and a lot of focus because it's dynamic. It's up on a bar. If you did it wrong, if you let go or something, you might fall. We have these movements where even though we're gassed, once we decide that it's time to jump up and do a set of chest to bar pull-ups, we're not thinking all that much during the set. We're not thinking about how bad is this? How bad do I feel? We're not feeling sorry for ourselves. We're not sort of letting all of this negativity creep in because we're so focused. We have to be. There's no other way around it. But as we start to go back into what some people would consider more simpler movements, a burpee, maybe even front squat, sometimes a thruster, rowing, any of these things where you can actually achieve a rep or, have more meters or calories show up on the screen, but we're not doing it right. We're sort of half-assing that movement. Those are the movements where we have to take that concept of focus and put it to practice within the actual movement where we're not focusing. And the realization came when I tried to really watch what was going on with the athletes that maintained intensity through just the harshest of workouts or scenarios. And they're focused. They are dialed in. They're dialed in even when they're running. They're dialed in when they're doing double unders. They're dialed in no matter what. And a lot of these athletes are pretty damn good at that 9 times out of 10, but they still have that one movement, that perceived weakness that sends them into a massively stressed scenario where they can't apply that same skill. So the concept of focus equals intensity is that when we go into any movement, anything, if we can focus on what needs to get done, rower, for example, try to use your posterior chain, keep your heels down as much as you can, keep your chest tall so that you're breathing properly and you maintain leverage over the handle. All of this stuff puts us into the movement and not into the mindset of, I can't do this anymore. And I really like to use the rower as an example here because you'll find that if you watch an athlete and they told you before they started that they were going to hold a 145 pace for their intervals, you watch the form start to go a little bit. You watch the screen go from 145 to 146 to 147. And then one of two things almost always happens. One, they completely blow up. They start to go to 148, 149, 150, 151. They are now 6 seconds away from where they were supposed to be at, and they look much worse than they did when they were doing what they were trying to actually do. Then you have the athletes who, when, coaching cue, hey, get this right, focus, get back down to 145, will actually go to a 144, a 143, and you see them back in it mentally, focused on what they're trying to achieve. They are trying to maintain a level of intensity within the movement itself, within their mindset, all of these different things. They're focused on the fact that they are using all of their resources to stay at that pace. And that's when an athlete can make a major, major, major breakthrough on anything. When we can apply that concept to all of these movements, a lot of things will change. So essentially what I'm saying is if there are these movements that demand our focus, we either focus or we don't do them, but they still have this incredibly high metabolic demand. How could those possibly be easier than something that has the exact same metabolic demand? And when we realize that that's more just what's going on in our mind, then we can start to attack this stuff. So essentially, now we've arrived at a place where we are remaining focused. We are remaining within this concept of focused is going to give me intensity. Now we go to the concept, it's on the Open Collection t-shirts, intensity is freedom. So it's essentially this idea that we're starting to this equals this, and it just goes back in a loop. Focus equals intensity, intensity equals freedom, intensity equals focus. We keep going round and round. And the reason that I say intensity equals freedom is because I'm insinuating that you're remaining focused and you're not giving in. When you give in, it feels harder and you're doing worse. And that sucks. That really sucks when you're trying to accomplish something and it feels harder and your results are worse. I'm not sure exactly who said it, but there's this term that floats around in the CrossFit community. It's not that much harder to go a little bit harder, essentially, to increase your speed or do more reps. I am insinuating that it's easier to go a little bit harder because a little bit harder requires your full attention. And if your full attention is on something, you are not going to let your mind go to those places that it goes. So the real message here is when you're going into a workout, you have to understand how to focus in each movement. What am I focusing on? Maybe it's not the technique. Maybe that's not your style. Maybe it is your breathing. Maybe it is your body language. Maybe it is how you count. Whatever it is, you need to stay focused there and not on the fact that it's hard, because it's always hard. It's hard on the days where those movements that you love come into play and you absolutely crush the workout, okay? the metabolic demand for you and another person is exactly the same, because if your capacity is higher and you love the movement and you're crushing it, you're getting a better score, or you're doing more work than them and you're getting just as crushed by it. But for some reason, we leave with that perception of, oh, I'm awesome at that. That was easy. No, it wasn't easy. You just remained focused and you did what you had to do. So obviously, a lot of this stuff that I'm saying is very simple and easy to say as opposed to put into practical application. But the concept that focus equals intensity, and then intensity is what's going to set you free and allow you to be the best version of yourself within each training piece, is extremely important. So just a quick recap, we have to make sure that we really, really, really dig into the data that we get from every single workout. And once we do that and we know how to attack the workout, then we are going to force it upon ourselves to stay focused within every rep of every single movement. And the second we float away, we're not going to try to get back to that old pace. We're going to try to go even a little bit harder. We're going to maintain that focus, which is going to give us that intensity, which is going to set our mind free and allow our bodies to do the work. It's open season. It's time to get after it. This is such an exciting time for both coaches and athletes, and I hope that you guys are really able to grab hold of this concept and use it, because I think everybody would benefit from this, no matter what the movement is. Throw those perceived weaknesses out the window. Screw that. Stay focused. Stay within the workout. Crush it. Then we move on to regionals. Good luck.